So this comment really brings up an important point, and that is this worst case scenario when it comes to nuclear energy that you might be asked to move. Even though when it came to Fukushima, the radioactivity was not sufficient to cause any measurable medical effects, the conservatism that we have when it comes to radiation protection caused the authorities to ask people to evacuate and to leave the area permanently. Now, that really is traumatizing if you think about what that would do to your lifestyle. And so that might make people think, well, obviously, that's far worse than anything else. And keep in mind that that's just part of the entire risk analysis that has to go into what we're going to do to mitigate climate change. Right now, we've allowed China to contaminate their environment as they manufacture the solar and wind-based products that are required for us to have traditional renewable energy. Now, they don't have the same kind of environmental regulations, so when they do environmental damage over there, it's not in our eyesight, so that we don't really factor that into the equation, but it does occur. And the reason why I bring that up is that of all of the energy sources that we have, nuclear requires the least amount of materials for the most amount of energy. So even hydro gets less energy for the amount of materials that you have to use. Now, concrete, making concrete and steel takes an enormous amount of energy. And so the more materials like that you're using, the more energy that you have to use to install that capability. So that it's a kind of a hidden cost that we're paying right now, that when we make these traditional renewables, that we're using greenhouse gases for the most part to make them, and that eventually they're going to have to replace themselves. And because they use so much material to get a small amount of energy, specifically with wind and solar, there's always going to be this high demand unless we do a lot of recycling, which we're not doing with wind right now. It's going to have a huge long-lasting scar. Whereas when it comes to nuclear, a tiny amount of material is required to get an enormous amount of energy. To put this in context, if you took all of the electricity that was produced in the United States by nuclear energy since the 1970s, which is about 20% all the way through, all of the spent fuel from all of that electricity would not fill up a single football field above 3 meters high. It just takes a small, tiny little footprint to do nuclear. And so these new small modular reactors, they're not as efficient as the larger reactors, but they have an exclusion zone that's actually inside the fence so that you would not have to move, even into that worst case scenario. And that's assuming that there was a release. And some of them even have the ability to walk away passive safe in their design so that they can't melt down. All they'll do is just get really hot and it will be expensive, but you don't have the release. So I hope that helps. Great comment. Keep them coming. Appreciate it. Thanks.